Today we're talking about the Corvette. This is an 02 C5. I bought it about a year ago. It's been over a year. And I bought it for completely the wrong reasons. But I'm glad it happened. I bought it. I was looking for a daily. I got a new job, driving a half hour each way. And I needed something fuel efficient, small, cheap, and I did none of that. I bought it for $15,000. It was a very good deal for the time. Had some issues, but it was all easy stuff, stuff that I could do myself, and I don't regret it for a minute. It's a great car. It does very well daily driving, surprisingly. Gets decent fuel mileage, not the best obviously, but it's a lot better than everything I used to drive. But I still think it holds up. I think it's a great car. I think a lot of people should think about grabbing one if they can. But I'll take you around it, and there's a million of these reviews out there, but this is just kind of my take on it. And just tell you at least what I've run into over the last year and what to expect. So, quick walk around. It's not perfect, but its paint is actually very decent on it. The front and rear bumpers have been repainted, actually just back in early September, or late October actually. I was completely off on that. Yeah, I dropped it off like right at the end of October, and it took them a week to get it fit in, but that was there since I got it. Little paint chips. Not a big deal. It's been sitting, so the rotor's rusted up. That's all right. Bought this car from a dealer, local dealer. Actually gave me a pretty good deal on it. I bought stuff from there before, so I guess that might have counted for something. But exterior-wise, it's very clean. Interior as well. I fixed a couple of things here and there, but everything works now. Stick shift. That's really the only reason I bought it, is it just came up at the wrong time, but everything else was right about it. So here's the mill, the ranch. It's got the 5.7 LS1. One cool thing with the later models, so this C5 went from 98 to 2004. But as they went on, they fixed some little things, improved some things. So some things they improved was this intake. It was plastic in the earlier ones, so now it's metal. I believe this was the same intake that went on the Z06 when they came out with it. They just brought it over to the base models too. Another thing was the fuel rail. I'm pretty sure it was an improvement, but there used to be 2 fuel lines feeding the fuel rails, and now it's just one. I like the later models because of some of the options they came out with. Heads-up display, which this one has. The traction control ABS module is rebuildable on these, repairable, and you can find other units too. The earlier ones, it is hard to find a full unit, and you cannot rebuild them, or at least nobody does online. I don't know what I would do if I had issues with that and I had one of those cars. As far as I know, this one is a lot easier to find, a lot cheaper to find, and rebuildable for very cheap. So when I first got the car, it had 118,000 miles on it. It's got 133 almost now, so I'll put some miles on it. when I first bought it, every once in a while you would take off and let the clutch out, and if it jerked at all, if it rocked, or you didn't get a smooth release, you'd hear a clunk from the back end. So when I bought this car, I had a few issues with it. There's a little bit of paint. Looks like whoever had it rubbed the paint on somebody's car. But when I bought it, I test drove it, and I noticed taking off, it's like this noise from the rear end, like a clunk or some kind of, it almost sounded like, like backlash on some gears or something like that. But it turned out it was this axle nut right here under this cap. So if those get loose, it'll let that CV joint just kind of, the splines in there to wiggle around and make noise. So I tightened both of the sides up. That one was really loose, and that was the one that fixed it. So I was really afraid that was going to be a torque tube or even a rear end in this car. I really didn't have the money to be doing that. But that's also part of the reason I got it for a deal, is because the dealership didn't want to deal with that. They didn't even know what it was. Some other things, the tires were old. Got new tires. Windshield wipers didn't work when you turned them on. The wipers would come up all the way up to the peak, and then they'd stop. And that was the intermittent position. They would sit there, wipe the window, come back up. It kind of looked stupid. Also, when I first got it, the oil pressure gauge on the dash was at max. I mean, it was at, I forget what the computer said, like 120 psi, I think was the max the computer read. The gauge goes up to 80, and it was pegged at 80 at all times. Even with the car off, you click the key on, and it goes straight up. So that was just a little sender unit tucked back in, up under here. So there's ways some people cut a hole up here. They pull this top piece off, and up under here they cut a hole so that they can get to it. I didn't want to do that. So the other way to do it is, some people say you can squeeze back in here and get it with your hands or with a couple socket swivels, and I just figured I had the time, so pretty much pull the fuel rail and intake, you pull all that stuff off, pull the intake off. So while I had it off, I put new intake gaskets in it, stuck a new sensor in there. I should have, and I had it planned, but I forgot about it. There's an extender, so it looks like this hose, and you screw it in and you put it up here, and then your oil pressure sender is right here. And then if it ever goes out again, it's just a quick swap. You don't have to pull your intake again, but I'm an idiot, so. Some other things I fixed. That door lock would not unlock electronically. It would lock fine, but when you unlock it, whether it was the button on the door or the key fob, it wouldn't unlock, so I'd have to climb in and pop it anytime I needed to get in there or somebody else was getting in. That was just, there's a control box in the door right in there, so open that up, and there's two relays. There's 4 relays total. So there's a lock relay and unlock relay, window up relay, or window down relay. And you could just look it up online which one's which, and I just replaced both lock relays because I had them. This HVAC screen, it looked just like that when it was on. When the car was on, everything was running. That, you gotta pull this whole dash plastic piece out. A couple screws, this comes out. And then you gotta pop the plastic housing off. And there's resistors on the back that when they get hot, after 20 years of hot, cold, they just quit. The solder joint's cracked, and that's what controls the brightness on this, so you just re-solder them. So that was easy. I replaced this little plastic thing. It was broke for some reason. The worst thing by far, that oil pressure sender was pretty bad. The heads-up display was fallen, so it's a little mirror that reflects it. So when you press this up-down button to adjust where it's at on the windshield right there, it would, like, I had to stick my head all the way up here to the, like, touch the roof to see it, and it wouldn't move at all. So the mirror, just the bushings on the sides broke, and it just kind of fell down. So you get a new bushing kit, you gotta take the whole dash panel off, and it looks crazy, but it's pretty easy. Again, go on YouTube, look up how to do that. But the worst thing that I had to deal with was under there, the column lock relay. So there's a certain amount of auto cars that got it. All the manual cars got it, where when the car was parked, you could turn your wheel and it would lock. And it was just kind of like a theft prevention, safety kind of thing. But there was an issue. GM recalled this car several times for it, that the lock cylinder, the actual mechanical piece back here in the column, would get stuck in the wheel. So you'd start driving and then try to steer, and it wouldn't. And then you get in a wreck. So a couple different fixes they did. They did a K harness, they called it, but there's another relay up under here that went in between the lock, the actual lock motor, and then the harness that goes over here to the relay, the original relays. And that didn't work. And then there was some bypass. I think the auto cars got it bypassed, where it was just completely removed, and there was another plate or something. It's complicated how the different ways they try to fix it on the different cars. But this one, it's bypassed, so the steering wheel does not lock. I believe the motor is just unplugged, so it was moved back manually and then just unplugged, so it won't ever engage. I did find the K harness under here, but it was unplugged. Under here, there was another recall. They did more relays, and so one of the original issues was the BCM is up under there, and the BCM controlled directly, had a little relay in there that controlled this lock, and that relay was too weak for the amount of current running through it. And so they put a relay to where the BCM controlled the relay, which then controlled the motor, but that still had the same issue of it wouldn't unlock. So mine started doing it. It would say service column lock right in here. And if you tried to move the car, one of the fixes was also they added programming where if the car moved and the BCM didn't get the signal that the lock was unlocked, if you got over 2 miles an hour, the car would shut off. It would shut fuel. And so if this thing got stuck here for a week while I was waiting on parts and messing with it. But I got an LMC5. It just looks like a little pill, like that big. It's got wires coming out of it, and the directions are great. It comes with all the parts. It's a little depin tool, so you take the pins out of the BCM, you shove these pins into it, or into the connectors, and it just tricks the BCM into thinking that it is controlling the lock, and then it sends the signal back at the right time that the lock unlocked, and then it lets everything go. So after that, I haven't had an issue. And it's like $70 for it. There's even one, I think it's $10 more, that comes with the harness to, if this did lock and get stuck. It comes with a harness that puts 12 volts. You plug in your 12 volt down here. It's got a connector just like that. You plug it in. Plug it in that harness, and it just manually sends 12 volts and unlocks. But I didn't have to do that because this one's already been unplugged and it's never locked on me. So it might not even be in there, but I didn't check. That was it. I mean, it's been a great car. It's fast compared to what all I used to drive. I drove my parents' 03 Suburban. That thing's slow as hell. I drove that for years. I mean, over 10 years to high school. And then to my job down in Daleville before I got the new job. And then that thing's been on the channel a couple times. But this little Isuzu pickup with a 3.1 V6, but it's slow as hell. And then back here I got my bike. This one's also been on a couple of projects. Suzuki DRZ 400 Supermoto. Also slow. But yeah, by far the fastest thing I've ever driven, ever owned. And it is fast. I mean, for a 20-year-old car, it still keeps up for the most part. But I definitely wouldn't have bought it if it wasn't a 6-speed. But one thing people say in the reviews that I've watched that I was bitching about earlier, this is the inside. Keep in mind, this is an 02. This car's 20 years old. If you compare it to something brand new, or even relatively new, it's gonna look old. It's cheap. It was built cheap. I mean, GM in 2002, of course they're building shit cheap. You know, panel gaps, right here. Yeah, does that look that great? No. Does this console look that great? No. But what the hell do you want from it? This car was 40. I have the window sticker for it. It was 47,000 when it was brand new. It was optioned up pretty well. But that's still 02. But the performance you get for the money these things go for now, I mean, a car like this, it's got 132,000 miles on it, but I fixed all the annoying things in it. It drives great. You know, something coming up quick is, I know for a fact, this clutch is original, torque tube is original. It's going to need a clutch, and while it's all out, because you got to drop the whole rear subframe and the transmission and the diff, because it's all in the back. The transmission's all back here. In between the engine, you got a clutch, and you got the torque tube that goes through, and it's just a big input shaft for the transmission, pretty much. But to get to the clutch, you got to drop all this out. So if somebody else does it, it's $1,100-1,200 easily. So that'll be something I'll try to do myself, but I'll need a lift. But yes, it's a cheap car. It was built cheap, but it's still a great car. You just got to keep that in mind. Exterior wise, I don't understand some people, and it's all opinion. I mean, take that also. You know, my opinion is this is a great looking car. I love this car. Even for being a 2002 20-year-old car, I think it looks great. I love the pop-up headlights. This was the last production car in the US to have pop-up headlights, so that's kind of a cool fun fact. It did have an exhaust on it before I got it. And the guy, so I met the guy that used to own this car just in traffic. He recognized it, and I stopped and talked to him for a while. He told me all the cool stuff about it. This bumper isn't original up front. He apparently left it in neutral or something, let it roll down his driveway, and it hit his neighbor's mailbox and put a pretty decent dent in the front. So this bumper cover is new. And then I got it repainted because some guy hit me right here and scratched up the paint. My back bumper got repainted because I was backing out of a parking spot to back into another one. So I pulled in like this into a parking spot to back across. As I pulled in, nobody was coming. There's a truck in this spot right next to me. So I pulled in, I started backing out real slow, and she came up on this side to swing into a parking spot over there and just pretty much scraped along. So it didn't like hurt the bumper, but it just scratched it. So it got repainted too. I've got pictures of it with the bumpers off. Looks pretty cool. Not really, it looks sad. This thing's also dirty as hell because I live on a gravel driveway. It's been all rainy the last couple weeks and cold, and roads are all salted up. So it's, 2nd of January. But last weekend was the coldest weekend I've seen in a long time. And it was rainy and icy, so. Anyway, I've got 2 roofs for it. It came with a silver roof painted the same color as the body. I put it inside. This is the clear top, but the last owner painted over it. So this is some kind of like, it's black and it's got like almost a gold flake to it. It looks alright, but I would have rather had the clear. because they look pretty cool. So I'll probably look on the forums, see if anybody is selling one. I'll keep the black roof, but because I do like the look of the silver with the black top. I might even do like a black wrap on here, but maybe. I'm definitely getting tint too. These windows need to be tinted bad. But for a 20-year-old car, this thing is, you can't get much better for the price. Yeah, every Mustang bro that pulls up to me, I mean, it's worth it every time, seeing the look on their face when they just, you know, people don't even realize, because who drives these cars? A bunch of old men. I mean, let's be honest, it's the guy that owned this before me. He was an old guy, and you know, he said he had a little fun with it, but for the most part, he did shows. He'd pull it up, polish it up, make it look all pretty, which is fine. You know, if that's what you want to do, do it. I don't give a shit what you do with your car. It's your car, you bought it, you put the money into it, take pride in it. I don't care. But I use this thing to get to work, and it's going to the track. It's getting modified. It's going to get engine work done to it, and hopefully I do it all myself and I can put it all up for YouTube. But I've got a set of LED headlights for it, but I just need to figure out how to wire them up, because it's a Sharp Light Innovations. A bunch of people use them, a bunch of people swear by them, but one thing they completely fail on is the wiring. It says drop your relays down up under the lights. Okay, whatever. But it says just run the wires across up to here. This is a gasket. It's supposed to separate things. Keep water out from in here, because I don't know if... Another thing with these cars, the ECU is right back there under the battery. So if you got water and shit pouring in here, like, you're just asking for trouble. You're asking for electrical issues. This battery is, you're supposed to actually keep AGM batteries, sealed batteries that aren't flooded batteries, so if they leak, it doesn't destroy your ECM and your wiring in general. But yeah, and all those wires were coming in here, and they wanted you to just, it was fuse taps. So it was, you go in here, you pull a fuse. Like, you pull one of these fuses, whichever one is for the high beams, and you stick this little piece of metal tab on it, and you stick it back down in there. All your wires are just hanging out here. There's nowhere for them to go. There's nowhere to route them in here. So you can't put this back on. It just looks like shit. It's like I paid $700 for these lights. You couldn't come up with a decent way to wire them in? But whatever. There are other issues with them, but when I finally get around to fixing at least that wiring issue and put them in, then we'll talk about the other issues. But anyway, I just wanted to do a quick overview. I give my 2 cents. You know, I mean, not everybody hates on these cars. The looks, I mean, it's all opinion. Some people say they hate these cars, and you know, that's fine. That's your opinion. Some people say they like Mustangs. Like, you know, to each their own. But for $15,000, and it's an LS1. I mean, you can find parts cheap for these. They're easy to work on. They're simple. So anyway, that was all I wanted to do, is waste some of your time bitching about other people. But you know, quit comparing old cars to new stuff. I mean, there's performance things, yeah. I mean, it's not completely a waste of time to talk about new cars versus old, but just when you're reviewing one car and you say, yeah, the interior sucks because it's all cheap and all the panel gaps don't match up and all that. It's a 2002 GM product. Everything from them from 2002 sucked asshole. Like, what do you want them to do? Go back in time? Like, it is what it is. I don't see it. I see the cheapness. I know what they're talking about. It's cheap plastic, but everything was cheap plastic back then. Ford was putting cheap plastic in everything. Like, just be fair. That's what I hate about some reviews, is be fair. Like, why would I take that and compare it to, you know, a 2015 Suburban? It just doesn't compare. But, and this thing wasn't really built for luxury. It's built to, it's a sports car. Even back then, it was a sports car. Honestly, this was the first Corvette that really, the C4 had some cool versions. Yeah, there was a C4 ZR1, I think. And they put some power in them, but this was the first one where the coupe base model was actually pretty stout. So anyway, have a happy new year. Hope 23 is better than whatever happened in 22. And see you next time.